Welcome to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I've seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and this is my first time experiencing these episodes.
And today we are reviewing Season 2, Episode 19, Stalker. Original air date is April 4th, 2002. Director is Peter Markle. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker and Danny Cannon. And we begin this episode with shots of the Vegas Strip, but overlaid on the shots of the Vegas Strip is like a phone ringing and then the beginning of a phone call. But before we transition to the next scene, Nick, what is our Vegas score for this week's episode?
I just realized I did the math wrong.
So no!
Updated. I was like, I can't believe it was so low. And
You're
then,
like,
no.
There's
It's
a lot
actually
of
33.
Okay, I was going to say, there's a lot of intermediary Vegas shots this
Yeah,
episode.
There's a couple extra intermediary shots. They really bring up the score. We give a lot of... There's also 3 shots in the first scene that I counted.
Yes, because they transition from different Vegas shots before we move on to the next scene. So
you basically get 3 points per scene, and then you get like a point per second is how it works.
Okay.
And so you end up with 5 different shots of Vegas, and that gets you 15 points. And then if you add up the seconds, including all the intermediary seconds, you actually end up with 18. I don't remember exactly. I feel like there's like 4 overhead shots, and I only really counted 3 of them because the last one isn't. Like my general rule is it's got to like include the strip or a part of the strip, or you know what I mean?
Oh, are you thinking about the shot that they did of like?
Vegas-y.
Are you thinking of the shot they did of the neighborhood, the overhead shot of the neighborhood?
Yeah,
I was going to say I don't think that counts because that could be like a neighborhood really anywhere in like.
If I could tell the difference between it being Las Vegas or California, it doesn't count as Las Vegas.
Fair. But
like the Hoover Dam, I think I often will count with a show like the Hoover Dam or something.
Yeah.
I would probably even count like a shot of the mountains. Maybe I'll give it like half credit or something. I don't know. There's been a couple interesting ones where like it's been really far away from the strip, but you can see the strip off in the distance. And I've counted that. And so I try not to be too crazy with it. And then whenever the episodes when there are casinos and stuff, it's always interesting. Like how do I give, like I usually get giving out bonus points for like,
that's fair.
How Vegas-y this scene is, you know?
Yeah. All right. Great. Well, that's a reasonable
behind the curtain.
Yeah.
In the Vegas score.
Yeah. Just listeners, if you were curious about how it gets tallied, that's a little bit of an insight. So we then see a phone. We see a woman like crouching in her hallway, absolutely terrified. The phone keeps ringing. A voicemail is left. The first voicemail is like sort of nice. You know, it's kind of like, hey, pick up, blah, blah, blah. And the phone rings again. And it is a not nice voicemail at all. But the person on the phone also says like, I told you not to bite your nails. So she's terrified. She's like crouching in the hallway. She's biting her nails. And the caller is like, I told you not to bite her nails, which sends her understandably into a complete panic. So she starts like running around her place, like checking the windows and checking her locks, and everything seems to be fine. She ends up hiding in a closet. Her little pup comes with her.
Yeah.
The pup part of this really hurt as somebody who owns 3 dogs.
I mean,
rough with the pup, but the pup comes in.
To be fair, we never find out what happens to this puppy.
Not 100%, but sort of we do. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay.
So she hides in the closet. Pup joins her, and then she is attacked in the closet. And I have to say, pretty brutal scene. Not like visually really, because they don't show you much, but like the audio of it, pretty vicious. So
the whole opening is quite intense.
It is quite intense. This is definitely a different vibe of an episode than I think maybe we've had to date, in comparison. So then Grissom and Catherine are on scene. The victim is in the bathroom, like very obviously like posed over the toilet. There are smears in the bathtub. Don't worry, they're not blood. They're hair dye. They walk in the hallway. There is no sign of the dog. Like there's signs that a dog lives there. Like there's a dog bowl and there's a leash and there's this, but there is no sign of the dog. And then they're realizing as they're kind of going through the house that it's like basically hermetically sealed. There's a state-of-the-art alarm system. There's nails in the window. The windows are nailed shut. Like it's, she has 3 different locks on the door. So they have 2 questions. A, how did the killer get in? And then also, how did the killer get out? Right?
Yeah, because there's no sign of leaving. The police broke the door down when they got there.
That's the only sign is the police breaking the door down. So with these questions in mind, we go to credits. We then come back to Nick just staring at the victim. just standing in the bathroom, staring at the victim.
Grissom
enters.
I really got this the first time because
I don't think
mean anything yet.
It doesn't mean anything yet.
But
it doesn't mean anything yet.
It is. I could have forgotten if you were supposed to assume like he's remembering something vague and just can't put the pieces together yet or whatever. But it was interesting on the second watch to be like, oh yeah, I guess that could hit home for Nick. And spoiler alert,
it does.
It was done for Nick specifically. But like he doesn't get like that light bulb moment never happens in this scene, which is kind of weird. Like
no, not in this scene. It happens
like
later.
Like a throwaway line. Like Grissom's even like at one point like, do you know
her? Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't say like even something like no, but kind of reminds me of someone I used to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Grissom kind of sends him out to go to the bathroom and start processing there. In the bedroom, Catherine is examining the bed, and she finds what she thinks is a hair at the time. So she, bags his hair, and she tells Nick to look underneath the bed. So he does. He pulls out a grocery bag, and there's like a red smudge on the grocery bag. Then Nick is at HQ, and he sees his Crime Stopper article.
And it's like on something else. Like it's like
printed out. Yeah, it's been like put up. And then he walks into Warwick and Sarah. They're having a grand old laugh about this Crime Stopper article about Nick. He tries to sort of like play it off, and he lets them know that Grissom wants them to like divide and conquer this crime scene. So they kind of divvy up different tasks. Grissom and Catherine are then with Doc Robbins. We learn that the victim died of suffocation, and she is in fact a natural blonde. She is not a redhead. And in an odd
thing where Grissom looks at
Catherine, yeah. No, I think Doc Robbins does. Oh no, maybe Grissom does. You might be right. I can't. It's one of them, and she's like, "What? Like, why are you looking?"
It's the indication that Catherine isn't a natural. I'm not
She's
sure
always
what I
been
was supposed
blonde.
to like. I'm not sure what you were supposed to draw from that moment.
I don't know either. And what we draw of value is that there's no like overt signs of sexual assault, which is strange in a sense. I mean, it's sad that it's strange, but it's sad that like in the like random death of a woman that there's like no signs of sexual assault involved. Warwick is then with Greg Sanders. This is where we learn that the quote unquote hair that Catherine collected at the scene is in fact not hair, it's fiber. This sends Warwick down a bit of a path. Greg Sanders then walks into where Nick is as he's fumigating the bag. And he tells Greg Sanders to like stop invading his privacy, which fits into the larger scheme of the episode. But he's like, hey man, like don't be printing out my article and like handing it out to everyone. Like that's not cool. Yeah. I don't appreciate it.
I mean, everyone got a copy, right?
Right. It's an internal newsletter. Like anybody can, but I guess like Greg Sanders took it a step far and like photocopied it and then like posted up the photocopies. So he did take it a bit far, probably.
For sure. I think they were just trying to make a bigger day out of it or a bigger thing out of it because of the theme of the episode. But it was a little oddly out of place.
Yeah, I think so too. So then as Nick is fuming the plastic bag, they realize that they're not going to get fingerprints off the bag, but there is a big old face imprint on this bag. So they figure out how the victim was suffocated, which is not a pleasant way. I don't think any way to be suffocated is pleasant, but I don't think being suffocated with a plastic bag is a pleasant way to be suffocated.
Gotta be one of the worst ways to die.
Yeah, I can't. Oh, I don't even want to think about it.
Anytime it's slow. Anything that's slow is the worst.
Anything, I agree. So then we have a nice little walk and talk with Grissom, Sarah, and Jim Brass. We learn that she had a TRO, which I assume is like shorthand for restraining order.
It is.
Okay.
I forget what the T stands for, but the RO is restraining order.
Okay. Yeah. So we learned the victim had a TRO against her boyfriend and that he called her 13 times the day of the murder. So suspicious.
Temporary. The T stands for temporary.
Temporary restraining order. That makes sense. Okay. Temporary restraining order.
I think that's the thing that like a judge will give you that until
you can get it. Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. Okay. Temporary restraining order. So then Warwick comes out, he intercepts Grissom, and we learn that the not a hair is a synthetic fiber. Then we go to Sarah and Jim Brass. They're at the boyfriend's house. He's not answering, but then Sarah spots his car. They go over to his car. And they find him in his car, like bloodied, and they're kind of assuming that he's dead. Like this is like a secondary crime scene. But I want to point out that before Jim Brass touches the boyfriend, he puts gloves on.
Yeah, because he's learned.
Look at you, Jim Brass. Look at you, police officer, like doing your crime scene investigation well. So he puts on gloves. He like goes to like, try to find a pulse on the victim, which like startles the boyfriend awake. He's not dead. He gets him out of the car and he's like, yeah, you're coming down to HQ with us because, we found your girlfriend or ex-girlfriend murdered. So then they're with him. We learn his name is Adam in interrogation. And he's saying, like, I didn't kill her. Like, she broke up with me. She started acting like super weird. She like quit her job and holed up in her house and didn't want to talk to me. And this might end up being the title of our episode. They're talking about how he was like on drugs. And he was like, yeah, I was on drugs. I was on a bunch of drugs. And then he goes, yeah, I was a space cadet, not a murderer.
Yes. Also,
and I was like, that's a solid episode title. Space cadet, not a murderer.
He basically did something illegal, got in a fight with somebody.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually remembers it.
No, I think he's basically like, I don't know. Yeah. Like I was on a whole bunch of drugs, but I didn't kill my girlfriend. No. And we find out, as Nick mentioned, that he like got into a bar fight, and so he does have like an alibi for the time of the murder. We follow Nick to his place. And this is like, so I had to laugh because we've had like a few instances the last few episodes of like, wow, this is like early 2000s, right? He's like in front of his like tiny TV. He opens up his like big old laptop. He's like checking his email.
It's such an AOL ripoff.
Yes,
America Online.
It was just so funny. I had to laugh because I'm like, oh, nowadays you would just like text your friends photos, right? Like, oh, I found these photos, isn't this hilarious? And he's like, oh, horndog sent me these pictures.
Ridiculous handle for
so weird. But so he's like going through the pictures, and it's like, obviously pictures of them from like high school.
I didn't get that, by the way.
Oh, that it's like high school.
Yes, not at first.
Yeah,
not until they told me.
Yeah. And then the last picture, or at least the last picture that we see, is a redhead slung over the toilet in the exact same way that the victim was found. So Nick is like, what?
And like, we don't find this out for maybe a little bit later, but he was basically there.
Yes.
And so like, and so that's where he may have, or could have potentially recalled the murder scene when he was sitting there like a space cadet staring at this dead body. It was just like, yeah, that's gonna keep coming back to you. I feel like it was such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, to say something in that scene.
This is one of those episodes where several times I feel like I was like, oh, they could have done this better.
Yeah. So then we stay with this storyline though, as Nick and Warwick are in the locker room, and Nick is like telling Warwick like, hey, the crime scene looks exactly like this photo. And Warwick's like, oh, is your prom date a suspect? And he's like, nah, she lives in like the boonies of Maine. But he's like,
boonies? I think
he said boonies. I think he said boonies.
That makes so much more sense.
I think he said boonies. Or maybe I'm just interjecting that because that's what I would say.
No, because he does say Maine, and I got really confused because I thought he said she lives in Bulgaria or something. I mean, like, and then he's talking about Maine, and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Does he just not know where she lives?
No, I think he says Bosnia. She lives in Bosnia. And then she's like, and then he's like, oh yeah, no, like somewhere, I don't know, somewhere up in Maine, which to him is like as far away as Bosnia, basically. I think is supposed to be the suggestion there. But he thinks at this time that someone at work has tapped into his email, that he like logged into like a work computer with his email and like didn't log out of it. So somebody, in their work building tapped into his emails, and and Warwick, good piece of advice. Warwick is like, have you changed your password? He's like, I have changed my password, which I also feel like this is like a PSA for early 2000s of like, have you been hacked? Please, first thing you should do is go and change your password.
He changed his password from horndog to password 1234.
1234. Yeah. So then Jim Brass is with Grissom, and he's like, we have a witness of sorts. So he walks Grissom into the room where the quote unquote witness is, and this is my spot. The guest star is Mr. Pearson, the psychic. And it took me a while. I saw him and I was like, I know him. So, where do I know him from? And I was
hold on. Before you say it,
yeah,
I feel like I know this guy.
Okay, so
I looked at his IMDb. Nothing rings a bell.
Okay. here's where I know him from, and it did take a while because I was like, well, I did watch. I've seen The Bone Collector a few times, so I was like, maybe that's it. But I was like, but his character specifically is not sticking out to me from The Bone Collector. It's been a while since I've seen that movie. So I was like, I know him. I know him. So I'm like painstakingly going through his IMDb. I know him from the Star Trek Voyager episode, Revulsion. Okay. Season 4, episode 5, where he plays a murderous hologram.
Okay. You know,
and that's
I've probably seen that episode.
And this is Leland, sorry, this is Leland, I didn't even say his name. This is Leland Orser.
Orser?
Yeah, and he's been in quite a few things. It's just, like his top credits, I was like, like he was in 7, he was in The Bone Collector, but I know him from Star Trek.
He's like 60 episodes of ER, but he has like a mullet.
Oh, weird. I've never seen ER, so I don't know. That wouldn't be where I would know him from.
I don't know him from that either. Yeah, no. This is one of those times where I was like, oh, if I'm conflating him with somebody else, I don't know. Or
I had a moment.
So many things that you've seen him.
I had
30 people.
I had a moment of that. I was like, oh, maybe I just know him from the, like, you know, I was like, maybe I've just seen this show so many times, and then I was like, no, I know him from somewhere.
He's also in Runaway Jury with John Cusack and Gene Hackman.
Okay,
I feel like I've told like 30 different people about in the last year.
Okay, I have not seen that one. So we find out that he's like a clairvoyant, and he had visions of the murder. So he's like giving Grissom some. And I think this is where he says the dog didn't make it.
So he says, I take it the dog didn't make it.
And then later on he says the dog didn't make it. I feel like
no one answers the question.
No one answers the question.
The dog.
But I feel like CSI just didn't want to admit that the dog is dead.
Correct. Or they cut a scene.
So, but it made me very sad because I was like, "Oh, the dog is dead! Like, why did you have to kill the dog?"
Because we mentioned the dog, there's something hilarious in this scene.
Oh, okay.
That I'm counting as my spot the guest star.
Oh, all right.
There is a giant cardboard cutout of Scruff McGruff, the crime dog, in the back corner of this room. It is behind like Grissom and Jim Brass when they had the close-ups. And I went, oh my god, it's Scruff McGruff. I went, does that count as a spot? Or no, Tara said to me, does that count as your spot the guest star? I was like, it does now.
Does now. Thank you, Tara. Yes, it does.
Yeah. It's I would call it life size. I think I think Scruff McGruff is probably like 6 feet tall. He seems really tall.
Yeah, he seems really tall.
A long trench coat, a hat on.
Yep.
He's only like 5'5", this cardboard cutout. So
okay.
That's, if you are listening to the show and you are not old like I am, Scruff McGruff is a cartoon crime-fighting dog.
Yes.
As part of the DARE program, I think, or
maybe
I don't know. He's from Chicago, Illinois. 60653. There's this little ditty that goes along with it. We're playing during a lot of kids television. I think it was a lot of part of that war on drugs phase.
Yes, yes. Which is not over, folks.
But yeah, he's basically a bloodhound dog in a trench coat. Yeah, he's not a flasher, despite what he looks like.
No,
but I'm guessing he's not wearing anything on that trench coat because he's a dog.
He's a dog. That is amazing. That is our first non-human spot the guest star. I love it. We then go to Sarah and Catherine. They're like in a meeting room. They're kind of talking about the case, and this is where we get the first confirmation that Jane, the victim, was being stalked. And then we also learn the rather horrifying truth that the calls she was getting were coming from inside of her house.
They didn't spend enough time at the house, and this is one of those things where I think they cut a scene. The fact that she had like 15 messages on her answering machine, I can imagine they listened to them on the answering machine.
Yes,
at the house,
so.
Investigating initially.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't have answering machines anymore, but if your friend had 15 voicemails from last night, you'd be concerned.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like people can kind of relate to that. It's like if you walked into the scene and a person had that many voicemails, you'd be like, why is this person being called so much?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And then we go to Jim Brass and Grissom. They're talking, and this is where we learned that Mr. Pearson was at the Monaco, and his room was adjoining to Jane's room. So
dun, dun, dun.
Our clairvoyant is looking a little suspicious, but instead of bringing him into interrogation, they bring him back to his hotel room.
Yeah, which presumably he's not staying at anymore.
I don't understand. This whole scene confuses me.
Maybe he is staying there. I don't know.
I think
Is he from out of town?
Regardless, It doesn't matter. Like, why are you not talking to him in interrogation? Why are you talking to him?
He brought the bloody car guy to interrogation instead of a hospital.
Yeah.
Yep.
I don't understand why the clairvoyant is getting so much of a leeway in this episode. It doesn't make sense to me. Spoiler alert, he's not the killer, but he still got way too much leeway before they found out who the killer was.
Super sketchy, like the moment they did they know that she was staying next door yet?
Yes, they already knew. So he's there and he's like explaining, that he like felt bad energy coming from the room next door, and that's why he called her, and she like kept hanging up on him, and he didn't realize that like that person was the person that was murdered in his vision. Like he didn't make that connection.
Side note, he is responsible for her death because she went to a hotel room. She wasn't safe at home.
Yeah.
And then he
scared her,
called her and made her think that she was still being stalked. And so she went back to her home.
Yep.
If she had just stayed in that hotel room, and maybe she would have moved home, or Jane Galloway could be with us today.
Yep. But thanks, Mr. Pearson. But they keep letting Mr. Pearson tag along, and so Grissom brings him to Jane's house, and this is where he walks in, he's taking a look around, and he's like, oh, those are the locks I saw in my vision, but they like look different. And he was like, maybe it's the angle. He's like, I feel like I was looking down at that.
I wrote in my notes, or it could be because they've been busted off of the door by the police breaking in.
Maybe. I mean, that could be a consideration for sure. But Grissom seems to like take note of this, and then he ends up finding attic access in her closet. Like there's like a little door / chute into her attic in the closet.
Poo-poo on the police for
not finding
this, like, and the rest of the CSI team.
Yep. She was attacked in the closet. Like the closet would have been a pretty major point of at least disturbance. I know her body wasn't there, but like you would think that there would be enough disturbance in the closet area to be like, we really should be searching the closet area.
But also, like, you're searching for a way a person came in or out.
Right.
And you go outside. Oh, there's windows to the attic. Oh, how do we get into the attic?
Yeah. Yeah. Big fail.
Obviously, you got to keep the surprise for the episode. I understand what happened, but it is kind of bizarre.
Very bizarre. So Grissom is exploring the attic. He finds a pinhole into the living room. He calls Catherine and he's like, hey, like between 2 and 5, like hold up your fingers. So she holds up 4 fingers, and this is where he's like, yeah, he was in the attic. Like he's been doing this from the attic. Grissom finds a phone.
You call it a pinhole, but that was like a 1-inch wide.
Yeah, it was pretty. I know. I shouldn't say pinhole. It's much bigger than a pinhole.
Yeah, I feel like if you were downstairs, you'd be like, "Why is there a giant hole in this?"
Well, he had a plug because he pulled like a plug out and then looked. But even still, you would think you'd look up and see like a little circle.
I mean, maybe a cleverly created plug.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm not going to judge that. I also people aren't like staring at their own ceilings all the time. So like, I'm not going to say to Jane Galloway, but if you were investigating a murder, you might look around.
Yep. So Grissom finds a phone. He like is able to tap into the line. It works. He calls Warwick. So, we learn that like, oh, hey, like, and then we find out that the fiber, it's like a synthetic fiber from like running cable. It's like a cable.
I thought it was gonna be fiber optic.
Yeah.
Like
a little early for that, I think.
A little futuristic of me, I guess, anachronistic.
Yeah. And Catherine ends up, coming up in the attic, and they find like a camera, they find a recorder, they find night vision goggles. Like he had all of this equipment up there.
Left it there.
And he left it there. Yeah.
Which they don't talk about, but I assume that implies that he left in a hurry. Like, I know they called the police. Yeah. The dog was barking that maybe...
Yeah. Maybe he heard the police coming. And
yeah, the police were coming and he left, and he just probably hasn't been back. Hopefully they're watching the place,
Yeah. But they realize that Jane must have let him into the house at some point.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, oh no. Like anyone with we invite anybody with a uniform basically into our house. So it could be any number. So they start like canvassing the neighborhood to try to talk to, because like somehow every single utility provider is within like 4 houses.
On that block.
They're right on that block today. It's just free for all. Because like, I walk outside and there's just utility vans all parked up and down my street. Kidding. So, but as part of this, yeah, but as part of this, Nick and Warwick walk up to an apartment complex. There is a Luna cable van parked near it, and Nick's like, oh, hey, like that's my cable, 150 channels, blah, 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 blah. So they walk up to the, the unit of the person that they're looking for. Warwick gets a call. He steps outside. Nick starts, the door's open. He's kind of like looking around. He finds like some spots on the floor. He's investigating, and then someone drops from the ceiling, and then we see Nick just come crashing out the window.
Nick! Patrol, request immediate backup. Immediate backup. Officer down. I need emergency medical assistance. 826 Harris Lane. Nick!
Yes. I feel like at this point, like, it's not really a prediction, but it was pretty obvious that the cable guy was the guy.
Murder.
There really wasn't anyone else for you to suspect. And then throw Nick out the window. And I was like, oh, well, that just about does. He comes up down from the basement or from the attic and it, like throws Nick out the window. I actually thought Nick threw him out the window.
Oh, yeah. Because you can't really, obviously, it's not the actor who plays Nick that they throw out the window. It's obviously a stunt person that looks kind of generic. So,
spoiler alert, they're wearing the same clothes.
They're wearing the same clothes.
Yeah, did we get to we may have glossed over the scene where in the bedroom where Nick is getting the plastic bag under the bed. Catherine makes a comment. He's like, "Oh, the dry cleaner keeps losing my clothes."
Yep.
That comes back around because the cable guy seems to have a bit of a session with Nick.
Yep.
And including when he comes down from the attic, he's basically wearing the standard Nick Stokes outfit.
Yep.
And that's maybe not obvious at first, but it does get brought back up later.
It does. So we go to Nick in the hospital. The whole team is in the hallway. We learn that he's going to be okay. Like, it's, he definitely had some injuries, but, none of them are life-threatening. He just, needs some rest and take his medication, and he should be, good to go in a few weeks.
In all fairness, like him and Work, we're only 18 months removed from Holly Gibbs.
Yes.
You go into a house of a person you think could actually be the murderer.
Mm-hmm. And you just let Nick go in there by himself.
Split up. Well, no, they were both there, but they split up.
Well, no, Warwick stepped outside to go take the call.
Take a phone call, yeah.
Yeah.
But even then, I guess they could split. Yeah, so Nick should have just waited, just gone together. Or brought a police officer with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Why are they going alone?
I don't know. No, again, yeah.
If this were Law and Order SVU, it would be the two police officers knocking on the door, asking the questions.
Right.
But
it's
CSI, so you get the CSI folks.
Yep.
But yeah, when Nick was in the hospital, I started to get that kind of vision. I went, they should know better.
Oh, 100% they should know better. This is not their first rodeo when it comes to this sort of stuff. The team continues to have conversations in the hallway, and they're talking about how the stalker, could have killed him if he wanted to, but he didn't. He obviously hurt Nick, but he didn't kill him. And this, raises some kind of questions. Grissam's
like, but why?
I know, but why? Catherine and Grissom are then at Mr. Crane's apartment. There's no furniture. There's a chair.
Yeah.
And a laptop, and that's basically it, which is very strange.
Grissom then high or college kid's first apartment look.
100%.
It's mattress on the floor, folding chair for the living room furniture.
It's when I'm playing. I play The Sims. For those who don't know, I have Sims tattoos. There's a few different challenges where you start with no money, and you have to earn money, and literally your house at first is a chair, and then a camping cooler.
Yeah.
You go to places and you sleep on benches until you can afford the cheapest bed.
It's how very Las Vegas of you.
It's very nice. So that's what it reminded me of. I was like, oh, this is my rags to riches challenge on the Sims. So Grissom goes into the attic, and we realize this is where he's actually living. His main focus is in the attic, and there's tons of tapes. Right? There's just rows and rows of all these tapes. And Grissom jumps back down, scares the heck out of Catherine, fairly on Catherine's side. She was like, what are you, we're investigating a murderer's apartment and we don't know where he is. You can't just come crashing down from the attic without saying anything. But they take the tapes. They go to the AV guy. They're watching the tapes and they're just creepy.
Can we back up and talk about the part where Catherine is there with Grissom but doesn't know that he came with a psychic
Yes, yes, she
the...
does not know that the psychic is.
Gil, do you know there's a guy down there? Oh yeah, that's our psychic.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, do you guys not around? Catherine? Did you not like look around when you got like you didn't?
We know
she could have killed this dude.
We
she
know.
Could have been like, what are you doing at this crime scene? Taking her gun out and shot and killed him.
We know that Grissom loves contaminating a crime scene with like potential witnesses / criminals.
Yeah.
Just keep giving them all the info, just keeping them well in the loop, even though they're, not CSIs or detectives, just some random clairvoyant. So Sarah and Warwick are then taking Nick from the hospital. He, no work for a week. He's supposed to like go home, just relax, take his medicine, Don't worry about the case. They're on the case. Grissom and Catherine are continuing to watch the tape. Sarah and Warwick enter. And Catherine spots, which like I think in like I didn't stop and take like a screenshot of it. Either Catherine has like 120 vision. I don't know if that's good. I know 20/20 vision is good, but like whatever would be like way better than 20/20 vision. She's just like, wait, stop. Like freeze there. Expand, like zoom in, clear it up. And it's enhance. It's Nick's Crime Stopper article. And they're like, oh no. So then Grissom's like, we're doing this wrong. Because they started from like the very first tape and that's how they're watching them. Grissom's like, nope. We have to go to the most recent tape and go there.
But also like, they must be like 2 from the end.
Yeah, I don't, but unless there was like a lot of blank ones, there was a lot of tapes in that attic. And that like shot, there was a lot of people
watching that room.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like you watched all of these?
Yeah. So, but they put the last tape in and he's like, oh, ask Nick. Like Nick's my buddy. Nick's my pal. And then he's like, Nick, would you let me stop your heart? And they're like, oh no, this is not good. Like this is a problem. We return to Nick at his apartment. He's obviously like on his drugs and a little like tired. And he's like trying to like sit down on his couch and relax. There's a knock on the door.
Poor guy, discharged from the hospital like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah, and then left alone. Like no one stayed with him.
He has a concussion. You have someone wake you up every 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't leave your friends at home in that state. But they did. Whatever. They had things to, which actually we'll talk about again. It comes up again in a little while. But knocking on the door, it's Mr. Pearson. Nick lets him in. Everyone's just like, I don't know who you are, dude, but we're cool. So he lets him in.
He's got one of those faces, you know?
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, he played a murderous hologram on Star Trek Voyager, and he did a good job of it. So I don't know why they're so trusting of him. But he's had more visions. He's like, does green tea mean anything to you? And like crashing from the ceiling.
They do. Tea, do they?
They do.
Oh, okay.
I
missed it.
It's not great, but they do. So we'll get there in a moment.
Okay.
So Grissom calls. And they're like, hey, like, Mr. Crane has been in your house. They obviously don't know that he's there right now. But they're like, he has been in your house. And he's like, oh, all right. And he's like letting them know that Mr. Pearson is there. Then Nick hears footsteps, like, on the ceiling. He hears someone above him. Mr. Crane then comes crashing down from the ceiling. But before he comes crashing down, they do, like, a shot right where he's about to crash down from. And it's, like, looking on the carpet. And there's a big T.
Oh.
On the carpet.
Oh, a green letter T.
A green letter T.
Let me say,
not green tea, like the beverage.
Why are they like? It's like, did Nick go to Texas University or something? Like I was trying to think what college that would have been.
I have no idea. That part I don't know. But that's the green. But that's the green tea, not the beverage. The green tea. So Mr. Crane comes crashing down from the ceiling, and once he's like up and holding a gun, we realize, as Nick mentioned earlier, that he's wearing Nick's clothes. So Nick's clothes that were disappearing from the laundromat were not disappearing from the laundromat. Mr. Crane was picking them up from the laundromat. Without the slip, though. So that's bad laundromat etiquette there.
Well, he could have had the slip.
Oh, yeah, because he was in his house. Yeah, you could have stole the slip. You're right. All right, sorry.
Or
sorry, laundromat.
Or just said the number. Like, I mean, it's very, very laissez-faire when you go to the laundromat and you're like, yeah, 135 or something. And they're like, all right, here you go.
Yeah.
They don't usually take the slip from you.
Yeah. And Mr. Crane is just, ramble, I mean, we're supposed to understand that he is just mentally not well. And he's like, hey, Nick, I know that you like redheads. And like, I did this for you. And you mentioned her name in your sleep. And I was just trying to, bring back good memories for you. And then we see, which I will say that I think the episode did a good job with this. We see he gets very upset that like after he installed Nick's cable and he felt that there was this like immense connection between them, that every other time that he has run into Nick has not acknowledged his existence. And then we see several scenes that were peppered earlier in the episode where he like walked right past Mr. Crane to get somewhere else.
I think that was just the one time they went to his house.
There was 2.
Oh, okay.
There was one, I think, at Jane when he was like leaving Jane's house, and then there was, I think, one when they were entering his house.
Okay, yeah, nighttime when he was leaving.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So then Mr. Crane threatens to shoot Nick, and Nick's like, well, not the first time I've had a gun to my head, which, true story, because we saw in the earlier episode when he had a gun. But then he goes and turns the gun on himself, and Nick, being a very valiant human being, is like, I'm not going to just let you kill yourself. And so he, starts wrangling with him. And during their wrestling session, the cops arrive. They like bust down the door because they're just busting doors down left and right in this episode. And they're able to like subdue him and get the gun away from him. And then we go back to headquarters. The whole team is watching Mr. Crane. He's, like in the interrogation room. And he just keeps repeating over and over and over again, I am one, who am I? And that's all he said. He just keeps repeating that over and over again. And Grissom is theorizing that he was trying to reach self-actualization. And his obsession with Nick was because Nick was somebody that he wanted to be. Like he wanted to like become Nick. But in order to become Nick, he had to kill Nick. Like Nick couldn't survive and also have Mr. Crane be Nick, right? Those like two things couldn't.
Body snatchers kind of.
Yeah, those two things couldn't happen at the same time. So gotta kill him. And then Nick, they're like, "Oh, don't worry, Nick. Like it's all over." And he's like, "For Jane, it is. She's dead, but like it's not over for me. Like this is
like really deep. Like the thing about like insight or like a call out to victims who are often like."
Right.
Long after the case is closed or
it's not over.
Criminal justice system is over. Like the victims of crimes are often shook and very sort of non-traditional to have a male character. In this role feel violated and stalked in that way, which is great. That's like one of the more applaudable things about this episode. But then like all of his friends abandoned him.
So this is the exact scene that I wanted to talk about where I was like, okay, he just got out of like the hospital and you all left him alone. Strike number 1, friends.
Yep.
Then Nick is obviously in distress. He is obviously very upset in this moment. And they're all, I guess I gotta get back to work. So, peace out, Nick. Have a good one. You can't go back to work yet, but we're gonna go back to work, and you figure this out, right? Like you'll be good. You'll figure this out.
A guy was just murdered in your living room. A guy who is stalking you and maybe killed somebody for you, which has got to mess you up a little bit too.
Yep.
Has been reading your emails, invading your privacy.
Yep.
You've made it really clear how private of a person you are to Greg Sanders and stuff. But no, all your friends are just gonna move on. You're on your own. Tough it up. Man up.
Be a man, Nick.
That's what Nick Stokes would say to Nick Stokes.
What are you doing having feelings? Ugh. And that's the end of the episode.
That's it.
So Nick.
One crying Andy.
So this Nick. What did you think about today's episode?
I don't like it. Anytime Andy Nicks get a bad shake from their friends, it's leaves a taste in my mouth. But no.
That's fair.
Yeah, the episode's a little weird. I was kind of surprised when it was over. I was like, it moved quickly. There are things that are done well in this episode, but they dropped the ball a few times. I was trying to decide if I liked it more or less than last week's episode.
Oh, I definitely liked it more than last week's episode.
Yeah, I think it is better. I just think that this episode needed more.
Yeah.
It's not a quick fix episode. This is one of those things where that script needed a rewrite. Mm-hmm. But it's not the worst. But I would like this would be like a skip. If I was binging on Netflix and I was like, I'm not gonna watch every episode of the show again. This would be like one. It's like, I don't need to watch this again. Skip.
Yeah, I appreciate that they tried something different, right? Like this episode had a different vibe, than basically any other episode to date. So I appreciate that they were like, hey, let's try something different. I don't think that they really hit the mark with the trying something different, but I can give them points for trying something different. And I appreciate that, like, Nick is not just a bumbling idiot. I shouldn't say bumbling. He's not a bumbling idiot in earlier episodes. That's not a right description. But he's used as like the green, I don't really know what's going on stand-in in other episodes. And I feel like he's an actual person in this episode. And he does have depth. And so I appreciate that.
And it's not like the same tropes for Nick they've been harping on in the past, right? There's
That's what I mean.
Different things.
So I appreciate that he, got to expand his character a little bit. I think beyond that, like, not a great episode.
And it was a table.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It was a bit of a rough second watch. Like, I wasn't super happy about having to watch this one again, and that's usually a pretty decent indicator of if I like an episode or not. Is like,
we need the F, Marry, Kill scale for CSI episodes. And like the ones you can only watch once are the Fs.
Yeah.
The ones you want to keep coming back to are the Marys, and the ones that are just awful. The transportation episodes are the kills.
Oh gosh, sorry, transportation episodes, but you just fall.
It's like this season would be better if this episode wasn't in it.
Yeah.
And so yeah. So we're gonna have to have the
we'll have to figure that out. We'll have to figure.
We'll have to come up with new names for them.
Yes, because those are really not. Yeah, I was like, those really aren't applicable names for our podcast, but we'll figure that out. But yeah, it's but we'll see if they redeem themselves next week when we review season 2 episode 20, Cats in the Cradle. In the meantime, you can find us you can support us on Patreon, so come join our Patreon to get early access to episodes, and we're going to be releasing some bonus content, and you get a shout out on the show. So go to patreon.com, search for Who Are You? a CSI podcast. You can also find us on Facebook in the same way. And then we're also on Twitter/X and Instagram at Who Are You CSI Pod. And you can email us at whoareyoucsipod@gmail.com. But otherwise, we will talk to you next week.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.